Start streaming. And I'm going to start this live stream in the way that every live stream starts. Is it working? Is it working? Does it sound okay? Are you guys out there? I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you guys are going to learn something today. At least I hope you do. I am really glad to be here. It's my second live stream in a week, and hopefully a lot more. I see you guys down in the chat. You can't hear me. One person said he can't hear me, but I think he's screwing with me. But the good news is that the usual problems that people have with live streams are not going to happen today because I've got my good friend Random FPV here who is helping me keep an eye on the chat and also keep an ear out for how everything sounds. Let's see here. Nope, wrong guy. You're not Random FPV. There he is. Hey, Chris, how are you doing, man?
What's up, man? How are you?
Doing good. Good. Thank you so much for coming out. Chris helped me out with the PID tuning live stream I did, and he completely unintentionally, he just showed up to my last live stream, and he was still marked as moderator from the time when he helped with my PID tuning live stream. So he just started moderating the chat, and answering questions. You said you answered 80 questions. Is that right?
I don't know. I didn't count them, but it was a lot.
Yeah, so I really appreciate it.
It really was. And it got to be like a game, because I would have to hunt them down. And
I know, they scroll by so fast. And I've thought about turning on the slow chat so you can only chat once every 30 seconds or something, but I kind of feel like people would get annoyed. I don't know.
I wouldn't do 30 seconds, but you could do 5.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So I really appreciate you being here because I want to answer every single question in the chat, and I just can't do it, especially as these streams get more popular. But I do want to mention that we are doing Super Chat. So if you are interested in helping to support me, I don't know if you heard, this is my full-time job now. So eventually I'll stop saying it, and you'll just all know, but it's still pretty new to me. So we're going to talk. You can hear him. He's back there. We're going to talk with somebody else who just got a new full-time job. But the Super Chat is on. In order to use the Super Chat, there's a little next to the smiley face, the emoji smiley face down at the bottom of the chat window. There's a little $ icon. And if you decide to do that, your chat will be pulled out into a separate window, and it'll just sit there staring at me saying, hey, man, come on, answer this chat. But some people at the last chat got a little annoyed, and they were like, listen, please don't go hard. You know how some of these gaming channels are just they spend the whole stream reading out super chats, and it's all just, it has a little bit of a sleazy feel. Don't worry, we're not going there. I'm always going to make time to answer questions for everybody, whether they pay me or not. But if you are interested in paying me, here's one way you can do it. So enough about that. That's the super chat. I also said that, Chris, I would let you. Is there anything that you have your own live stream, don't you? You're not just a co-host and chat moderator of my live stream.
Yeah. I've got my own live stream. It's Dead Band, the Dead Band Show.
I should put a link to that down in the video description, which I'll do after the live stream's over. Is that how often do you guys broadcast?
We're every Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern. It's myself, Dynamic Array, Old Gravy Leg, and D-Dub FPV.
Do you really know? Yeah. Do you really know somebody named Old Gravy Leg?
Yeah, that's my man, and he's my boy. We actually just sent him a microphone from when people donate on our live stream. We, at least right now, are putting it basically right back in. So we sent him a mic to get his audio sounding good. So
that's good. Yeah, it's such a big thing. People kind of, you can see my live stream looks a lot better right now. People are complimenting it, and one reason for that is the lights, which definitely the lights are better, but. Another reason is that I bought a Lumix G85, which is like $1,000 camera. So when people ask, well, what do I need to do to get my live stream looking good? Certainly one answer is spend $1,000 on a camera, and suddenly it looks a lot better. But yeah, getting your studio set up, it's always, every penny is helpful. I know that. And I'm going to also introduce you guys to my other guest, Kevin StingerSwarm. Welcome.
Hey, what's going on? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and you and I have some big news, kind of the same news, which is that we both quit our jobs recently.
Yes, we did.
But you quit a way cooler job than I did.
I don't know about that, but well, yeah.
I walked around hospitals with a laptop seeing how the Wi-Fi was, like the Verizon guy, except for Wi-Fi. What was your job?
I was like a glorified bus driver. No,
Oh,
I worked.
come on.
I worked for an airline carrying passengers around the country. So
Uh-huh.
as a
Yeah.
pilot.
And everybody is like, "Oh, you're a pilot." Everybody thinks that's so cool, but is it really cool, or is it just kind of like, I'm driving a bus in the sky?
Okay. The fact that you're actually flying an airplane, like the flying of the plane is cool, but the reality is it's a job, and just like anything else, you've got a schedule to keep. You've got all the kind of just BS in the background to deal with that any job has ultimately. Yeah. So
Yeah, and you say they had a schedule to keep. Just recently they were really working the hell out of you, weren't they? I saw your videos,
dude.
Well,
Yeah, I in 19 days I was on the road for 16 of those days. So from before Christmas until just yesterday, I was working pretty much nonstop, and that was just kind of it was a symptom of what was happening at the airline that I was working at. They lost a contract with Delta, and things are just changing a lot. A lot of people are leaving, a lot less flying is available, and my schedule is just getting worse and worse. And it was kind of time to make a decision. And I had opportunities that arose with Rotor Riot and Quad Kamp, which is my baby. And so I jumped on it. And
yeah, and that's one of the other reasons I wanted you to come on this week, especially because I actually kind of pre-announced it in the last live stream. I wasn't sure if it was actually up yet, but I was glad to see you announced it. So Quad Kamp is going to be in, I say it's in Atlanta, but it's not really in Atlanta. It's in Loganville, Georgia.
Yes.
On what are the dates?
27th and 28th of January. So just a couple of weeks away. Yep.
And for anybody who isn't aware, well, first of all, quadkamp.com is the website, right?
Yep, link in the description, as always.
I put it there before the live stream. Oh, how about that? And what is Quad Kamp? Because this is the second one. You guys had another one out in California somewhere.
Yes. Okay, so what Quad Kamp is it is kind of the education arm of Rotor Riot. And as of right now, the event that we did in California and the event that we're doing in Atlanta are really open-ended events. These are events that are kind of smaller in nature. We're limiting it to 35 total people, and we're going to have you, Joshua Bardwell, me, Tommy, and Drew, and along with some other special guests to be there to give one-on-one assistance to help everybody get up in the air, make sure that your quad is set up in the best possible way, help you with your tune, and also maybe a little bit of flying techniques, just one-on-one time. We sit down, help you get the best experience that you can when it comes to flying, and then we go fly some cool spots.
Yeah, awesome. So it's kind of like just go hang out with pro pilots, and kind of like I do when I want to do a live stream and I just don't know what to do. I just go, all right, just sit down with a bunch of people, and whatever they ask, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. We are also, the one thing, as we go along, we're getting more and more structured. And as of right now, one of the things that we found from the last experience was that a lot of people needed help with was the actual setup of the flight controller. So we're going to start off this time just going through and making sure that people have enabled the things that make a quad fly like it's 2018, such as anti-gravity, air mode, the best filtering settings, that you're running proper loop times, simple things that make really big differences.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that. A lot of times people send me questions and they're like, well, my quad is doing this weird thing. And it's like there's no obvious answer, but I'm like, I just know if I was sitting next to you and could just look at your quad, there'd be something you did wrong that I am not even thinking of, that I would just look at it and go, oh, no, don't do that. And so this is a great opportunity for people to actually have that experience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We had so many like anecdotal things that I could tell you from the first quad camp. Like for instance, I had a guy that was had tuned up his quad, and he's like, "Hey, would you fly it for me and see what you think?" And I was flying it, and honestly, it felt pretty good. And then it just kind of fell out of the air on me, which I didn't like. I felt bad. He felt bad, and were immediately like, well, why did it do that? And upon inspecting it, I was able to see, like, because it's right there in my hands. Oh, you shorted out a motor wire with this screw right here. Done. That's your problem. And it was something fairly easy for him to fix, and he got it fixed and back up in the air right away. So it's cool stuff.
Awesome. Good. And there are still seats in that one? Is it limited seats, or how are you doing
It is limited. We're doing a max of 35 people. At the last check, we were up to 23 tickets sold, so there's only 12 spots left.
So there are 12 spots left, and people can go to quadcamp.com. Well, they could go right now if they wanted to, and
Absolutely.
they could grab one of those spots. And I had one guy, one of my viewers, he was like, I heard you're doing quad camp. I'm coming from like Philadelphia. And I'm like, really? For little old me? And I was... Go ahead.
Yeah, I was really shocked. The first one we did in California, I thought it would just be local guys, but we had people that came down from Seattle. We had one guy from New Orleans, another guy from Arkansas. We had people coming all across the country out to California for that event. So just be aware, we're going to be doing them every month in the future. Right now, we only have the one announced, but that's what I was working on all day today, was lining up events for February and March. And hopefully very soon we'll be able to have like 3 months worth announced in advance so that you guys know what's coming up and what cities we'll be in.
Because this is your new full-time job, isn't it?
This is my new full-time job, is developing out Quad Camp, not only as for events, but also we're going to be doing some online education and really trying to figure out everything that we can do to help ease people's entry into the hobby.
And I want to talk about that, but actually real quick, because I'm going to forget. People are asking in the chat, how much is it? How much are the tickets?
The tickets for Quad Camp for the weekend are $250, and one-day passes are $150.
Okay, and also you do need an AMA membership. That's like an insurance thing.
Yes.
Which I know, I see somebody in the chat saying, "Oh, well, that kills it for me." And guys, I'm an AMA member, and
Me too.
The question of politically whether you agree or disagree with the AMA. The fact is that for a lot of these guys running the events, to buy insurance without the AMA would just kill the event entirely. So it just really makes so many of these things possible to be able to say to your insurance carrier, who you still have to buy insurance, but you can say, look, we're covered by the AMA. And then they just go, oh, no problem, take it off. So it's just, if you don't agree with that, there may be other opportunities. But anyway, so let's talk about so what is it? How are you feeling now that when you get up in the morning and you don't have to go to your job anymore? How is that for you?
Okay, so technically I've only had that for one day, which was today, but it felt pretty. It's strange how it changes my perspective, because I'm so used to my days at home. It's like, okay, I got 3 days at home. What can I do to maximize and make video production, everything. And I know that in 4 days I'm going to be leaving. Whereas today it's like, all right, time to settle in. It's like, man, this place is a mess. If I'm going to be here a lot, I want it cleaner. And so I spent like half the day cleaning. Well, a good part of the day cleaning, a good part of the day working on the next events, and then went grocery shopping. And I was able to buy a bunch of stuff knowing that, hey, I'm not going to be gone in 4 days. Like, I don't have to worry about this going bad. I can cook it and I can, have leftovers.
Yeah. I also had a travel job. I would typically be 1 week at home, then 1 week gone. Sometimes I was gone 2 weeks in a row, and rarely I was home. I was home 2 weeks in a row, and it just was so weird how every single decision I made was overshadowed by the looming. Even if it was like 9 days out, I would be like, how many days do I have till I have to go? And it just was constantly in the back of my head. And it really, I guess if I just was, going to something that I really loved, I'd be looking forward to it. But since I was just going to walk around a hospital and measure the Wi-Fi for hours a day, I was not. And it was like, you'd think you could just set that aside and get on with your life for the 8 days that you're home, but kind of not. And now, when I get up in the morning, I'm like, what am I going to do today? I'm going to make videos. And it really actually, I don't want to sound like I'm taking that for granted or rubbing it in, because I know that there are still people out there who have like a 9-to-5 job that they hate, and that's life for a lot of people. I kind of feel like having been given you guys out there, all of you commenters, viewers, everybody else who's put me in the position I'm in, have made it possible for me to be here, and I owe it to you even more now that I'm kind of living the dream to just produce good content and do stuff like that. You have any thoughts about that?
No, it's yeah, it's
not a great interview question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let me one of the things you mentioned was wanting to help people get into the hobby, get over the hump. And I think that's when I heard about the quad camps, I actually was really excited, and I called up Chad Capper and I said, you have to get me in on this because it's so in line with what I've been trying to do ever since I started the channel. So I'm really excited to be a part of it at this next one in Loganville and who knows what going forward. But yeah, this hobby really needs something like that.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I'm really excited about everything that I've got in the pipes. A lot of stuff that I can talk about, a lot of stuff I can't at this point. But man, there are a lot of really cool events that we have planned on the horizon. It's not all going to be like these where it's smaller with just us. We're trying to figure out ways to do really cool big events too.
Yeah. So. I have similar dreams. So. All right, so that's Quad Camp. You're going to stick around for a bit, though, I hope, and
absolutely,
we'll answer some questions, and we'll just do the whole live stream, shoot the shit thing. And one of the questions I saw in the live stream that you're uniquely qualified to answer is, what do you think of the Banggood clone of your frame?
God.
So you have a frame. First, plug your frame.
Yes. Okay. So I worked with X-Hover, which is my longest running sponsor, and we made the Stingy frame, which was everything that I wanted in a frame. A True X, wider stance, so it's more stable. Top mount battery, low profile to get the center of gravity where I wanted it. And I love that frame. Then I don't know if it's Bang. It doesn't matter who it is. Basically, somebody in China came along and completely copied the frame. I don't know how they got the files. Maybe they went to the people.
Well, you could just, I don't know how these things work, but I think you can just trace the frame or scan it even, right? I mean, it's just a two-dimensional outline, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's disheartening. If you look in Rotor Riot, Sean Blakemore, who is behind Impulse RC, the Alien, the Helix, what's the one they got now?
Currently in Lithonia, it's 58 degrees.
Okay, I accidentally activated Alexa. That's odd. Yeah. So, anyways, Sean talked a lot about all of the things that are included in the cost, and I think that's an important distinction to make, because people are like, if this clone is only $40 and you're charging $115, you're taking $70 of profit. And that's what kills me, because people don't understand that's not our profit. We go to a company that cuts the frame. We pay them, and their profit is built into that cost. We've already paid more at that point than they could sell it for and make money. And now on top of it, we have to get, we have to source the hardware, screws and everything. You have to promote it. You have to go through iterations of design. You have to do testing on it. You have to build in retail sales. So X-Hover, if they sell the frame if they want Rotor Riot to carry it or Get FPV to carry it, then those companies need to be able to make a slice of the profit, typically 30%. And so there needs to be X-Hover needs to be able to sell it to Get FPV and Rotor Riot and still make a profit on those sales. And so I don't know, man. It's disheartening having the clone out there and then people telling you that you're getting rich. I make more on a t-shirt than I do on a frame sale.
That's the thing. I mean, the one thing I feel like, I don't have a frame out there, and so far no one's cloned my parallel board, but I feel like clones are kind of a fact of life. I mean, you could be mad at the rain, but it's still raining. But then it's got to be disheartening to not only have someone clone your frame, but then to have people not understand. I saw some of this when people would see, guess at how much I make on YouTube or how much I'm making on Patreon, and go, they don't really have a perspective on, well, I just bought $1,000 camera and my live stream looks great, but you could, well, is that worth it? And then people don't understand what goes into that. And the same thing is true for frame design or any kind of product you're designing, especially if you're talking about a company that actually backs the product up. A lot of the companies that do the cloning, one of the reasons they can cut the price so low is because they ship product, but that's pretty much all they do, compared to a company that's going to actually have customer support and so on. So
yeah, and for instance, on the Stingy frame, we had an issue with the first iteration, which was like the first 300 frames, and Daniel was able to get a new bottom plate and replace everyone's bottom plate. But between shipping that extra part that he provided, it basically wiped out all of his profit on the first batch.
Yep.
And that's something that has to be factored in too. I don't know.
So anyway, we could go on and on about clones, but let's not. I'm still checking the chat, looking for questions, and I'm seeing. Let's go ahead and get some more of those in. People are commenting on the stuff we're talking about, and I'm definitely happy to do like an interview podcast style. But if you guys do have questions, especially for StingerSwarm or myself, definitely put them in there. Tag random FPV. What would you recommend here? I'll get this one. Dustin Brookins asks, what would you recommend as a good starter drone? No TXer, no transmitter or FPV, just a good starter drone. I'm going to assume what you mean by that, Dustin, is that you don't want the drone to come with a transmitter or FPV goggles, not that you're looking for a line of sight starter drone. Kevin, what do you think a good starter drone is, other than just building one off of your frame, of course?
Okay.
Like a starter, like a ready to fly or plug and fly, something that somebody could buy and not have to build.
I think that a really good one is that Blade Torrent.
Blade Torrent.
Yeah, of the ones.
I'm going to pull up a picture of that while you're talking. Hold on.
Of the ones that I've messed around with that are, off the shelf, ready to fly, somewhat protected, and going to perform near where a 5-inch freestyle / race frame performs. I think the Blade Torrent is a pretty good option.
Interesting. And that looks, I've got a picture of that up now. It looks like that is a 3-inch? Looks like 3-inch, maybe 2.5-inch props?
Maybe 2.5, maybe 3. I'm not sure exactly what the specs are on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see people mentioning the Lizard 95. That's a good option. The X-Hover Win 2-inch I've been messing around with. That thing's a lot of fun and really small too. I just didn't recommend it off the bat because I think with the motor protection you get on the blade is a little bit better for somebody just starting out.
Yeah. And a lot of people would say that if you want to start, you would start with something like a Whoop. What's your opinion on going all the way down to like a brushless?
I love the Tiny Whoop. I love that class of the brushed small FPV quads. The reality though is that they don't fly in the same manner as like a larger 5-inch quad does, and it's worse. And they're fun, but it's a different experience, and they're not all that much cheaper than getting into something like.
It's funny you say that. Actually. And Danger Dave FPV points out the Blade Torrent requires 25mm spacing on the flight controller, which means you can basically only get the flight controller from Horizon, which is he thinks it's a little bit of a downside worth mentioning. It's funny you say that about the Tiny Whoops. I have a video coming out next week about a review I did of some Tiny Whoops, and where I kind of saw the light as to what makes Tiny Whoops fun. And I think the secret for fun, I agree with you, they don't fly like the bigger quads, and they're not necessarily the right way to train for a bigger quad. But what makes them really awesome is if you get like 3 or 5 guys just sitting in your living room on a freezing cold winter day, set up some gates or set up a course and just race and have a blast. And, you could even drink beer if you were into that because you're not outside. Nobody cares. We had so much fun just smashing these things around. And it even felt like racing, in the same way. But
I'm 100% on board. Yeah. The only time that I really fly Tiny Whoops anymore is when I'm doing it with other people. When I was doing it in California with Rotor Riot, and we did the Tiny Whoop in the van, that was a blast. We flew them a bunch. When I've gone to races and people have them and you fly them in the hotels afterwards, that's great. When I have them at home, I'll get it. It's like, ooh, it's a new Tiny Whoop. It's got I don't know, whatever new gyro, whatever I'm excited about. I'm like, this is so cool. And I fly it for like a day. I'm like, yeah, it flies better than the last one. And then the next day I'm like, let's go fly the big quad.
That's a problem, and I think that's why I was disappointed with them for so long, because people kept saying this micro flies like a 5-inch, and none of them do. They don't, but that's not the point. If you try and fly it like a 5-inch, you will be disappointed. You'll constantly be pointing out its faults, its shortcomings, but you got to play to its strength and its advantages. And that's why when you see one of these guys and it costs $160 or something for one of the Tiny Whoop racers, which is one of the ones we reviewed, that you're like $160. I could practically almost kind of get into a 5-inch for that, but not quite. But you can't fly a 5-inch in your house with 4 of your friends while drinking beer on a cold winter day. And what is that worth to you?
Nor can you fly a 5-inch straight into your buddy's face and have him just giggle about it.
You know, it's funny you say that, but like literally my first pack, I landed right on top of my buddy's face, who was also flying. Like, you just have to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Danger Dave FPV asks, is your frame designed to keep motors protected in a crash, and that's why the little stingers break instead?
Yes, it is designed for the stingers to hit the ground instead of the motor, but it really only works when it's cartwheeling. Everybody's like, it's not in front of the motor where you're going forward, but okay. I'm going to grab
it right there.
Here.
Yeah, show
it. So here's the stinger, it's off at a 45. They're there so that when it's tumbling like this, like cartwheeling, it's going to hit the arm instead of the motor. Because if you put carbon fiber in front of it so that when you go forward, it hits that first. The problem is we don't fly like this. We fly like this, which means that even if you're going fast forward and you hit something and you have carbon fiber coming this way, it's still going to hit the motor. So it's not designed to protect necessarily in fast forward flight. Is designed more like once you've already crashed,
cartwheel scenario.
It's going to hit that.
Yeah. Cool. Yes, Joe, that is Random in the corner. Random, say hi to everybody.
Hi to everybody.
No, hey, he's still there. He's working the chat.
I'm alive. I'm just logging your guys' questions. Just keep bringing them on. No problem. That's why I'm not answering a lot of them in the chat. Last week I was like drilling the questions out, but I'm going to keep
few in the chat. If you have any you've logged that we need to get to, definitely jump in and throw them out.
Well, you actually got a super chat a while back.
I do.
I think it was your first one. That was a question I don't think you got.
Brian West, I told Brian West asked if he can get a vector file for my logo, and the answer to that is yes. Brian, you can email me. I chatted him back, but he might not have seen it. So you can email me, and I'll get you a vector file for my logo. Nicholas gives $5 and says you've been extremely helpful. Thank you, Nicholas. Means a lot. That messages like that really keep me going and remind me that on the other end of this torrent of emails and messages from people who need help are people who desperately want to do this awesome thing, and I can help be the gateway to that for them, and that's really rewarding. A little tear in your eye, but I'm actually serious. Dustin Lewis gives $5 and says, what are your thoughts on the new Kalman filter in Betaflight 3.3? Are 32K gyros the future? How much better do you guys think this will be than 8K? So let's talk about that for a minute, because I'm actually really interested in this topic. I made a video a while back talking about how 32K filtering in Betaflight was not ready yet because Betaflight wasn't ready to take advantage of it. That 32K sampling in the gyro needs special filters, and Kalman filters is one of the things that it could be. But the bottom line is that the filters and the processing need to be tuned to that higher sampling rate because it gets more noise in addition to more data. I actually tried to fly one of my quads with Kalman filters, but we weren't able to get it. It wasn't working quite right, and I wasn't able to get it in the air with it active. So I haven't flown it yet, but the people who have flown it are really impressed by it. I will say that Nathan, my friend Nathan, he's kind of turning into my Grumpy Trev. You know Grumpy Trev from Stu's channel? He's a really good pilot, but he's also kind of hates everything unless it's really good. So it's nice to ask him his opinion. He said he flew it, and he was like, yeah, it's kind of, I feel the difference. There's still a little prop wash and a little bounce back. You still got to tune it, he said. But he did say it makes Betaflight feel more like Raceflight. So if you think that's a good thing, maybe you're going to like it. But I do think 32K gyros are the future. And the reason I think that is because now that Kalen, RS2K, who is the Raceflight guy, has started contributing to Betaflight, he's going to push 32K, and he seems to have the goods. So I think that is the case. Anybody out there who has a flight controller with a 6,000 gyro on it, I'm going to be real interesting to see what happens with Betaflight 3.3. Anyway, Kevin, have you flown the Kalman filter build of Betaflight yet?
I have not.
No, you heard anything?
Sorry
about it.
I haven't really, honestly. No. Nobody I know is flying it.
Yeah, right. And very few people can fly it. You have to get a nightly build, and then there's tuning of the parameters. Most people who go ahead and install it, it's just their quad is just gonna go off to the sky. So, what about you fly Crossfire? Someone in the chat is asking about Crossfire. You fly Crossfire as well, right?
I do.
I know you do, because we flew it at the Hawkins lab, and I had Failsafe City, which I maintain. People are asking about my failsafe. I maintain that my failsafes were because I had a crash on the first pack and something got damaged. But other people are saying you're flying 2.4 gigahertz around, the gateway to the upside down world, or what I haven't said things. So, what's your thoughts about Crossfire? Why do you fly it?
So I got on Crossfire wanting to do some. I got on Crossfire wanting to do more long range type things, but what I found once using it is that you get lower latency than with the FR Sky protocols. And so that's really why I've gone to it across the board on all of my quads. Plus, with it, I know that I can always fly to the limit of the 5.8 video. When I was on just the FR Sky, occasionally I would have fail safes that were, I'd still have video and it would just fall out of the sky. And that always drove me nuts. I don't really have that problem with Crossfire anymore. It just works. And I like things that just work. That's why I haven't tried the new Betaflight with Kalman filters and stuff. It's not ready for me yet because it doesn't just work.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's definitely not ready for prime time yet. And if you're hot to try it, don't, unless you know that you just get ready to sacrifice the quad you put it on. It probably will be fine, but it might, light on fire and whatever. But you do think that Crossfire has lower latency? I mean, I know on paper it does, but do you feel like you can feel it when you fly?
I can. It's not like a huge difference. If I go back and fly something on FR Sky for a second, I'm like, ooh, that feels a little laggy. And like 20 seconds in, you've forgotten it again.
Yeah.
When you fly them back to back, you can feel it. But once you're used to it, it's not a huge difference.
I remember making the transition from PPM to S-Bus, and it was a huge difference, and I could never go back.
That was a huge difference.
It sounds like this is not necessarily as night and day.
Well, here's the thing, like going from PPM to S-Bus, that was, I don't remember exact specs on that, maybe like a quarter of the speed, but it was like going from, 75
it was a big difference.
Yeah, it was like 75 milliseconds down to 25, whereas now you're going from like 25 down to 16. Those aren't actual numbers. I'm just throwing them out. Like, it's still a big proportional difference, but really it's only a few milliseconds.
Now, Angry Mark FPV wants to know if you're running 150 hertz or 50 hertz.
Wait, what?
On Crossfire. I thought Crossfire is Crossfire always 150 hertz, or can it also be 50 hertz?
He's talking about the update to the firmware where you can select that for the QX7, and I modded my QX7 so it actually runs the full speed.
Okay, right, because the QX7 has an issue with it needs an inverter installed, and then it has to slow down. But is that something was there a software fix for that, or is that only a hardware fix?
There is a software fix. The software fix is you run the refresh rate between the radio and the Crossfire module at a lower rate, and that's what he's asking about. But I'm running it. I think the default is like 400 hertz, and I'm running it at the 400 hertz.
Yep. And do you have the micro receiver, and you have the micro transmitter as well, or you don't have the big whopping one, or do you have?
I have the big one. I have the big whopping one with the display and all.
And we talked when we were out in Atlanta that what transmit power do you typically use?
I almost always use 100. If I'm going to do something where I think it might, like, I'm going to go fly as far away as I can, I'll bump it up to 500. Or, I plan to fly on the backside of that building, I'll bump it up to 500. But I almost never do. Most of the time, it's just 100 milliwatt.
Yeah, and it goes up to something like 2 watts. But you said if you actually do that and you land too close to yourself, you can
Yeah.
actually damage the receiver.
Yeah, people don't realize that if you have two radios, one transmitting, one receiving, and the transmit power is high enough and they're close enough together, you can kill receivers that way. And so with the Crossfire, if you're running 2 watts and you're holding the quad, you will, like holding the quad and the transmitter, and they're both on, you will kill your receiver. So you have to be careful. You got to like set your radio down, walk over, plug in, walk back. Like it's too much work. So really anything over 500 milliwatts, that's a danger. At 100 milliwatts, it's not too much of an issue. 500, I'm conscious of it, but not going like crazy out of my way.
And people are saying in the chat, why don't you just set it to dynamic power so it'll go up and down? But you said, I think you told me you don't do that.
I do not do that. Originally with the Crossfire, when it first came out with dynamic power, it took the concept is as the signal quality gets lower, it will increase the output power so that you never lose signal and you always just use whatever you need. Well, the early firmwares, it worked great for wings and stuff because you always have basically the same orientation, or like long range fixed wing guys that just go out, turn around, come back. But with mini quads, you're like flipping upside down, rolling, doing all this stuff.
Right.
And polarization is a big issue on 900 megahertz. And so when it would get out of polarization, the strength would drop so quick that it wasn't correcting it. Now, I've been told that the update time for that is much better now, and that it's not an issue by Trappy himself. But I don't know any pilots that are using it and saying that it works great. And so until this is my rule of thumb, that's why I'm not doing the Coleman filters. Until somebody I know and trust their opinion tells me, hey, I'm doing this and it works great, I just don't do it because I don't like to experiment.
Yeah. Some people are asking in the chat, do you need ham credentials to run Crossfire? And I'm pretty sure you're supposed to have a ham license. I know you need it for the FPV stuff, but the Crossfire stuff is frequency hopping, right, at 900 megahertz. So I don't think you need a ham technically for that.
I don't want to say for sure. I know that. Okay. I will say for sure that 2 watts in the U.S. is a FCC violation, so you can't do that anyways. If you've studied and taken your amateur radio license test and are a ham operator, you'll know that model aircraft control link is limited to 1 watt in the States. So if in the menus you lock your Crossfire to FCC regulations, it won't let you go to 2 watts.
Oh yeah, okay, good. And you still need a ham license to do the video stuff.
Yeah,
pretty much under every unless you're using an FCC certified video transmitter, which is that Fat Shark one that's only like 1 milliwatt and nobody uses it. So you're supposed to have it anyway.
You might as I tell everybody, go and get it, because what you'll learn from studying for the written exam for that is going to be useful in terms of flying FPV, because you're going to understand more about what's going on with frequencies. You're going to know things like blading and reflections and the effects that they have on circular polarized signals. You learn so much about basic RF in studying and getting that certification that it's a great knowledge base for anybody starting out in the hobby.
Yeah. At the same time, I got to say, a lot of it is to do with radio stuff, like ham radio stuff. God forbid it's a ham radio test that FPV pilots have absolutely no interest in. Like, what band should you use to bounce off the ionosphere to talk to China? And it's like, I just want to fly my quad. I kind of wish that there was a kind of FPV version of the ham license, because they really don't touch on a lot of the things that are relevant to us. But BetProps FPV wants to know, is the ham license pretty easy? And it depends on how good you are at studying for the test. All of the questions and answers are public. So you'll get like 30 questions picked from a pool of 160 or whatever the numbers are. But if you're decent at studying for tests, if you did good in like school at just memorizing facts and studying, like I didn't know a lot of the ham radio stuff because I'm just not interested in ham radio. Sorry, hams, I'm not. And I just memorized it. I just took the sample test again and again and again until I just knew the answer. What is the locus of the contravariant tensor? It's 42. Okay. I have no idea what that means, but I got the question right. So it's not a hard test. But if you are not good at memorizing and remembering facts, then it might be hard. Let's see here. What else have we got? Chris, anything? Any questions?
Oh yeah, we got tons, my man.
What do we got? We
can talk about Crossfire. We can talk about ham. We can talk about something completely different.
What do you got that's completely different? We got Crossfire, ham. What else you got?
So this is what I actually want to know myself because there's not a lot of information out there. So Mindless FPV wants to know, have you, Joshua, and I'm sure he's asking Stingy as well, played around with different settings in BLHeli 32 and achieved good results? Are there settings that we should all be using in the BLHeli 32 and nobody knows or is really talking about?
Yeah. I'll throw to you, Kevin. You got any thoughts about that?
Yes, I go in and turn on the LEDs.
Yeah, you turn them on. Yeah.
No, honestly, for BLHeli 32, I don't. In the configurator, I do like 3 things. I make sure that the motor direction is working properly. I turn on the LEDs to be pretty colors because you get to pick your colors in there, and the other thing, which this is just personal preference, is the brake on stop, I believe it's called. It's the amount of braking that it applies when basically you disarm. I turn that all the way up because I like a quad that I can disarm and the motors just stop, so I can do things like, catch it in my hand without worrying because the props are still spinning down. I can throw it at Willie when he's pissing me off. So yeah, that's something that I personally like.
Yeah, the only one that I know for sure that I've heard, when BLHeli 32 first came out, some people were messaging me saying they had hot motors, and none of the usual causes of hot motors were there, which usually it's excess D-gain or excess noise getting into the gyro. You turned your filters too far off. But it wasn't that, and what fixed it was going to 48 kilohertz PWM rate on the motors. So this is the PWM frequency that the ESC uses to drive the motor. And I've never heard, I kind of think that everybody could consider doing that. I don't do it on all of my quads because I just am too lazy and don't have the time to bother. But if I had a quad that I really cared about and really wanted to fly best, I would try setting the PWM rate to 48 kilohertz. As far as other stuff like the motor timing and so forth, I got to tell you guys, the days when we had to worry about that stuff as much, these days the ESCs and the programming in them is so good. The hardware especially is so much better than it used to be, that the days when you get desyncs if you didn't set the timing right are kind of gone. Every quad should at least fly on the default settings. If it's dropping out of the sky, it's not that you don't have the timing or the DMAG set correctly on the ESC. You may be able to tweak the performance a little bit and change the sort of efficiency of the motor to get a little more thrust for a little more amps by changing the timing, but you don't have to. And then as far as the brake on stop, that I'm not sure if I've ever heard of a situation where that caused an issue though, where like if it goes down to 0 and the prop kind of stops suddenly while you're flying and like you get a death roll or anything. I guess you haven't had that, or you wouldn't be doing it.
No, never had that problem.
No. It is pretty cool when they just stop dead. So
yeah.
Danger Dave FPV asks, what would make your flight controller reboot when the voltage drops too low? Well, it's funny you say that. I mean, the flight controller is operating at like 5 volts, and so if you got your battery plugged into it, it should really never get low enough to cause the flight controller. You shouldn't brown out from like 14 volts down to like 5 volts. That's just not going to happen. So typically, if the flight controller is browning out, it means that there's a problem with the regulator, not the input voltage. I don't know. Thoughts about that, Kevin?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's a voltage regulation issue.
Yeah, maybe a bad regulator.
Could be overloading the regulator. Could have too many things running.
That's a very good one. Good thought there. Yeah, if you're overloading the regulator, especially if you have a linear regulator.
Also, which flight controller is it? I might have some insight.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's the question.
Yeah, there was basically what I was going to say is on the Betaflight F3 and F4, they were having issues where um, they designed it with the intention of you powering your video transmitter off of the regulated voltage, but a lot of video transmitters are pulling more than their stated current requirements, and we're overloading the 5-volt regulator there. So yeah, could be something having to do with that.
Yeah, and especially if you have a linear regulator, they often don't. The linear regulator's output is limited by the heat buildup. When it gets too hot, it goes into sort of safety mode and it shuts itself down. And linear regulator, you look at the data sheet and it'll say one amp, but it's 1 amp, in the middle of the Arctic with a fan blowing on it. And under normal conditions, it's like 300 milliamps before it shuts down. And so if you're overdrawing it, you may find that the voltage drops out even when the input supply is good. So those are our thoughts on that. Yeah, what's up?
Speaking of flight controllers acting funny, obviously this one's a voltage low question. I've got a different question about a flight controller acting strange, and I've never seen this, so I thought you might like to answer it. It's from Ajin Rashad Abdul. Sorry if I didn't say your name correctly, man.
That sounded good to me.
He wants to know, his quad basically starts acting crazy when he raises his rates up above a certain point. And he says it's basically, below that point, the quad's fine. As soon as he gets over, it's 1.5 RC, 0.7 Super, and 0.3 Expo, that it goes nuts. Have you ever heard anything like that?
I would want to know what going crazy means. Like, I would really want to characterize that more. Does it mean you get oscillations? Does it mean it gets super twitchy? Like, did he give you any more information about, like, what going crazy means?
He did. I believe he said it was like flips and rolls.
What were the rates you stated there?
Here we go. Oh, I just had it. 1.5 on the RC, 0.7 on the Super, and 0.3 on Expo.
That feels pretty close to my rates.
Huh.
Go ahead, Kevin.
No, I was just curious. I know that there were issues.
He says it won't stop rolling when he does a roll.
Yeah, there were issues at one point in time where you were able to put in a rate that would go above the gyro's capability, and it would basically cause infinity rolls, which is what it sounds like his is doing. But I'm pretty sure that it's baked into Betaflight now, that it won't go above the gyro's ability, which is somewhere around 3,000 degrees per second, which should be way higher than that. So it might be a bad gyro.
I think the rates max out at like. Go ahead.
CLF4 and those ESCs to do death rolls, is that the same kind of thing?
No, that was an issue with the power design, the power plane, the ground system or something. That was not it. Okay. I think the max rate for Betaflight is 2,000 degrees per second. I know that's true if you're just using RC rate, and I'm not sure if you add S rate on top, can you go above 2,000 degrees per second. But if it won't stop rolling, my first thought is that you got a motor that is not spooling up. So it could be, because, the motors go to full to push the quad into the move. And then while it's spinning, the motors are kind of at, half throttle, just sort of keeping it going. And then as soon as you go to return the stick to center, the motor has to spin up to stop. And it basically has to go straight from 0 to full. And if you have anything wrong with your motor, then it'll just keep spinning and death roll. That would be my first guess. There was a question that went by that I want to make sure we get before I forget about it. The question was this: is there any reason why we don't just invert the pitch axis? And this is for you guys who like to play first-person shooters and you prefer the inverted pitch axis, and it's what you're used to with your computer joystick. And so you want the same thing out of your quad. I got to tell you guys, here's the biggest reason I think. People ask, I had one guy say, I want to fly like mode 3. He didn't say it that way. He just said, I want my yaw to be here and my roll to be there. And he was doing it because he played computer games. He kind of wanted to emulate what happens in a first-person shooter, the way you move. And I recommend that almost everybody who's starting out learn to fly mode 2. And the reason to do that is the same reason I think if you're going to learn to play guitar, you should learn to play a right-handed guitar, even if you're left-handed, so that when you're with other people, you can play their guitar, or when you're with other pilots, you can fly their quads. The social aspect of this hobby is so huge. And if you learn to fly mode 3, then when you get to meet Wild Willie or when you come to the quad camp, Kevin, you won't necessarily be able to pick up somebody else's transmitter and just fly it. And I think that's a really big deal.
Yeah. I'd never thought about it like that, but that totally makes sense.
I would say the only exception to that would be that I think there may be still some people in the world, some parts in the world where most people fly mode 1. And if you are around, if everybody at your local club flies mode 1, then maybe you might want to learn to fly mode 1. Final glad I'm talking to you. But once you learn, it's going to be really hard to relearn. That's the thing. You can learn a new skill. And I have no problem going from first-person shooters or Xbox games to my quad. It doesn't confuse my hands at all. It's just they're just two different things. Once you learn it, it's hard to unlearn it and learn it a different way. Let me get a couple of the super chats. I'm going to remind everybody we're coming at the end of the first hour. Stinger, you gonna stick around for the second hour, or you got to go?
I'll stick around for a while. Why not?
Oh, wait, what do you got to work tomorrow?
Nope.
So we're coming up to the end of the first hour. I'm going to remind you guys again that the super chat is there if you want to leave chat. Somebody was asking, how do I do super chat on mobile? I actually have no idea. I'm a terrible streamer. I don't really know how to do this stuff. I also have, I'll just plug this one time. Hold on here. And I also have this. You can't see it because of the way that I've got the window. There you go. There's the URL. If you guys if you can't do a super chat or you want to support me some other way, there are any number of ways you can support me. One of the easiest ways is to click on any of these affiliate links before you make a purchase from any of these vendors. And actually, I just finished the affiliate agreement with Race Day Quads. I couldn't be happier to have them sort of in my stable, or me in their stable. They're fantastic. You can click any of these links before you make a purchase at any of these vendors, and I will get a commission on the sale no matter what you buy. The Amazon one I especially want to mention because, some people, I do all my shopping on Amazon, and, if you're going to go buy a TV or a refrigerator, whatever, a new camera, go ahead and click that, and it doesn't cost you anything. But if you want to support me with a super chat or any of these things down at fpvknowitall.com/support-me, you can just get there from the About page on my website. That would be great. And speaking of super chats, we have a couple of super chats that I need to get. I'm confusing myself with the mouse here. Hold on. There we go. I have a couple super chats to get. Daniel Maurer asks, I want to make review videos, but I don't have the money to buy gear to review, and I don't have the reputation to get gear for free or cheap. People ask me, I kind of fell ass backwards into this. And so I don't know necessarily what advice to give you. What I did and what made me successful is I started out by providing help to people. I made videos answering. I said, post these black box logs to RC groups and I will analyze them for you. And I just started posting them and it worked out. If you want to, it's like people say, if you want to, I want to be a Twitch streamer. Well, that's really hard to break into. That's like, I want to be a pizza eater, a professional pizza. Yeah, everybody does. But if you want to help people somehow via your YouTube channel in a way that other people maybe don't want to, everybody wants free stuff. That's a way to kind of get yourself a following and stand out. At least that's what worked for me. I would say if you really want to get into reviewing products because you love reviewing products, not because you want free stuff. Because let me tell you, you can get free stuff and it's like, if you don't love reviewing it, then, and you want to help people make the right buying decisions, then it's just another job. I would say start out buying cheap stuff and do really good, really in-depth review videos of it. You don't have to buy a $300 pair of goggles. You can buy a $20 flight controller and show people that you're a good reviewer. But at the end of the day, if you don't have subs, nobody's going to pay attention to you unless they just kind of take pity, which can happen. But at the end of the day, you're going to send an email to somebody and say, hey, I'd like to review your product. And they're going to go look at your YouTube. And if you have like 100 followers, there's just I don't think you're going to get anywhere. I don't know. Kevin, any thoughts about that? Oh, wait, I have to bring Kevin back up. There you are. There you are.
No, sorry, I had muted myself. I had to sneeze. Yeah, dude, breaking into this is, I don't know. It's such a complicated thing. Yes, if you want to help people, that's a great way in. If you want to review products, then here's my thing. What do you want to do? Go do it. It doesn't matter if you do it poorly. Just do it. When I started making vlogs, like I started off making flight edits where I would go out and fly, and I made horrible ones. But I kept doing it, and I got better at flying, and I got better at editing, and then people started watching them, and I just kept building. And then I wanted to do vlogs, and I got a camera, and I talked to the camera for like 2 months before I ever posted anything because I looked awkward talking to the camera. And then eventually actually what happened is I just committed that I was going to do a daily video, and I had to release it. And they were
I remember that.
They were bad at first, but I got really
I don't think they were bad. I think they were pretty freaking good. Everybody is their own worst critic.
I know, totally.
I do want to say there are some people out there who think they're awesome and they're not. But there's no reason to spread hate by calling out. And I don't think anybody in specific, but most people are way better than they think they are, and are their own worst critic. I remember when you started posting that 30. You said I have a ton of backlog footage. I'm just going to post one a day. I thought they were all great. That's when you first came to my attention.
Yeah, well, there were two separate things. I did like a clip a day, which was just backlog footage, and then I did the video a day, which is a whole other thing, and that was like shooting, editing, posting. A lot of times day off. I got ahead of myself a couple times, but then I would end up taking a day off and fall right back to day off.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, so and you, let's see, what was your name? Hold on. Daniel said, I don't want free stuff. No, I didn't mean to accuse you of anything. I'm just saying there's some people out there who see a big pile of free stuff behind me and think it's all, gravy, and they're like, how can I get in on that? And I'm like, sorry, it's if you had a job.
It's not cracked up to be at all, Josh. You know what I mean? Like, you end up with so much stuff, and if you don't actually, like you said, if you don't enjoy doing it, that's going to be a lot of work that you're not going to like.
I mean, it's still a lot of work. It's still a lot of work, but you got to enjoy it. But he says, I want to fill a space that I see in the review videos that exist in the mini quad YouTube space. And I would say that's wonderful. But you can start. Sometimes people say, I want to start a YouTube channel. I want to start vlogging, but I just don't have the money to buy the equipment. And I'm like, listen, I mean, you could shoot a whole freaking, in fact, somebody did this. It wasn't an Android phone. It was an iPhone. They shot a whole motion picture on iPhones. At the end of the day, we all have the technology to start making content if you want to start making content. Now I sound like Casey Neistat, but we do. It's true. It has never been easier to express yourself, to get noticed if there's something notable about you. The problem is that everybody else is doing it too, and it's hard to break through. But if you feel like there's something that's missing that you can fill, that is exactly how you can be successful. If other people, because other people probably agree with you. It's the beauty of the internet is that there, pick any person on earth and there's at least a few thousand other people on earth who think they're awesome and want to be just like them. Right. And if you can find those people, but you got to love what you're doing and want to do it, because if you don't, then you're never going to make it past. It took me, I don't know exactly when, at least a year before I got 1,000 followers. And I've been doing this like 3 years now, and I'm just now cracking 60,000. And where's that exponential growth curve? It's not happening, but I just keep doing it because I like it and I'm doing okay. How many followers do you have, Kevin?
30,000 and something. I don't know.
30,000, please. I heard of a guy who said he went to a YouTube convention or a streamers convention, and he said it was so toxic because everybody there was like just sniffing butts. Like literally, people would be like, "Oh yeah, how many followers do you have?" Oh. And if your follower number wasn't big enough, they just didn't want to talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing is people are like, "Oh, you're so successful." Or, I don't know, but 30,000 in terms of YouTube numbers is nothing. Like,
I mean, it's not nothing.
Yeah, but it's not like millions or whatever. I don't know. 30,000 is good in this hobby, but if you're like a vlogger or something, 30,000 is kind of laughable.
No, yeah, for vloggers, yeah. I'll tell you, in terms of getting review gear, I first started getting noticed when I was around 1 to 2,000 followers. I can't remember, or subs, or I can't remember exactly when it was. And this is a good tip actually. What broke me out was I did a flight controller roundup where I took all of and these were F1s, this back, and I have a few F3s, and I put them all in a spreadsheet and I broke them down and I made these videos comparing them. When you mention vendors' gear, they notice sometimes. I didn't have a huge following, but people search for their own products and they look for what people are saying about their products. And when people saw me, that got me the attention of these manufacturers, who then said, "Oh, hey, this guy's doing cool stuff." And that was the first time. So, and I remember I got the call. It was from Hobby King. They sent me an email and they said, "Hey, saw your video. Do you want to have a look at one of these chargers?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't have it. I used to have had it back there for the longest time. It was this reactor charger." And I was like, "Oh my God, someone's going to send me free stuff. I can't believe it." And so I would say you don't even need to buy gear if you can provide value, like by doing some kind of a specs breakdown or a commentary about a product. You don't even need to buy it. And you can get noticed by commenting on people's products. So maybe that's a good tip. Well, I got some other super chats I want to make sure I get. How is the battery testing going that I paid for? So thank you, Gregor. It's going okay. So let me give you a little update on that. I actually have some pictures I want to put up. So give me 1 second to get those pictures ready. Let me give it 1 second. Put it over here and we'll go over here. Oh, there you go. So the battery amplifiers came in the mail. They were earlier than I expected. It was supposed to be the end of January, and they came, and you can see them right here. That's these guys here. Some people thought they looked like Bitcoin mining rigs. That's not what they are. Basically, the battery goes here on these great honkin' 2 American wire gauge, 2 AWG wires. And it gets plugged into there. I need to, actually, one of the things that's holding me up right now is I literally just got this like yesterday and hooked it all up. I need to get something that goes from 2 AWG down to 12 AWG, 12 gauge, so I can put an XT60 on it. But the battery plugs in here, and then this is the computerized controller, and it draws the current. And basically, these guys are 20-to-1 amplifiers. Well, there's 4 of them, so each one is, I guess, a 5-to-1 amplifier. So this guy pulls 1 amp, and these guys pull a total of, I don't know, 19, whatever, however it works out. And it's all super calibrated, so it's all accurate, and it all wonderfully works. But it's not quite ready yet because I still need to get this adapter to plug the XT60 in. And I also am working on figuring out my solution. Hang on. For the temperature control. So temperature control is really important. Even a difference of 2 or 3 degrees Celsius can make a big difference in a battery's performance. Here's a little tip for you guys, by the way. And I don't know, I've heard about people doing this. I don't know if it's true. Kevin, you can tell me if you've heard about this. I've heard of some racers bringing like a hot bag, and they put their batteries in a hot bag so the battery is warm coming out and it has lower internal resistance and it performs better. Have you ever seen anyone do that?
I have not. I know that recently I've been doing my flying from the car because it's been crazy cold. And what I've taken to is putting like 3 or 4 batteries like on the seal in front of the heating vents in the car so that the heater is blowing hot air on them.
Yeah, yeah.
And that actually seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. So the batteries, in order for the test to be valid, need to be at a consistent temperature. And so what I've got here is this is a temperature controller. Basically, when the temperature gets too low, it turns on, and when it gets too high, it turns off. And in this bag is a rolled up seedling heater mat. Like if you're a gardener and you're starting seedlings in the spring, you'd put this under your seed tray. And basically, the battery is stuffed in here with a bunch of towels to give a little bit of insulation against airflow. And I've been it really needs to hold within about a 1 degree range to be accurate, in my opinion. So I'm working on that. It's still not, I may need a different temperature controller. This one may not be precise enough. So that is another thing that I'm working on. But you can see right here is my setup. This is going to be where the permanent setup is. I've also want to give a big thanks to BatSafe, who, let me go to the picture of what's shown there. Oh, there you go. Big thanks to BatSafe for giving me this box. They gave it to me to review, and like so many things, I haven't gotten around to reviewing it because I'm just so freaking busy. But I'm going to use it and I'm going to plug it every time I do tests. So hopefully they'll be happy. But I do actually think it deserves a review. It's a really cool product. It's basically a thermal protection if your battery goes off when you're charging it or discharging it. And it's got this filter here on the lid so the flames don't come out. Some smoke comes out, but the filter actually helps absorb some of the smoke too. And I've got a really cool little grommet here for wires to go in and basically just latch it shut. And people say, I can't believe you're going to put that's out in your garage, right? No, that's down in my basement. But hopefully the bat safe will keep me safe. So this is the setup. I'm going to begin testing, I think, by the end of January. I mean, I'm already starting to do some preliminary tests and just get a feel for how the software works and so forth. But I think I should be able to start doing official testing by the end of January-ish, which my original deadline that I gave myself was sometime in February, because I didn't expect to get the amplified loads until the end of January. So that's there now, but that's your little update on the battery testing. I'm super, super psyched to be doing this stuff. Kevin, somebody's asking about your Crossfire antenna setup. What antenna do you use?
I thought you'd never ask. No, I saw it in the super chat. I was waiting. I would have mentioned it if it didn't come up. But I use the stock antenna. I've tested with the Immortal T, and the Immortal T is good, but I've actually had better luck in terms of durability with this setup on the stock antenna than the Immortal T.
Show a little closer to the camera so people can really see how you got it.
It's hard to.
Yeah, no, I kind of see.
Wait, let me click over here so I can see what my live view looks like. Okay, there we go. So basically what I'm doing is the stock antenna, if you run it in a straight up and down, so that you've got two pieces. If you run them in a straight line with themselves, then you have a dipole antenna. If you take the ground plane and split it off at a 90 degree, like I have, then you have a monopole with a ground plane. And the reason that I like this setup the best, including over the Immortal T, because the Immortal T is another dipole antenna, this has better polarization properties for flying in multiple orientations. Because what ends up happening is that ground plane works as a reflector, and if the angle isn't great in terms of the incoming signal polarization and this antenna's polarization, that can kind of bounce the signal a little bit and give you good reception. So I don't have as many polarization issues while doing all the flippy floppies.
Yeah. There's a big difference between how you want the antenna for a fixed wing, which is usually upright, and a mini quad, which often is not. Chris, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm using the exact same antenna configuration. I've had extremely good luck out of it. My Crossfire rig is the first one that I built, and it did take me a while to get it going, about 3 or 4 hours, but if you follow along on YouTube University, you'll be fine. But that antenna setup has not let me down, and I've been a ways off, a good ways. I've ran video out at 800 milliwatts, so.
Pardon me. Sorry, bad time to go to my camera. The antenna setup is so critical for Crossfire. People expect Crossfire to just be this magic bullet that you stick the Crossfire receiver on your quad and then you just never fail safe again. But if the antenna is not set up right, you can just get like no range or sudden dropouts because of the polarization, etc. But once it's right, it's pretty bulletproof.
Yeah, only issue I ever had with Crossfire was polarization causing fail safes. So while we're on the topic of grab my radio here, I'm also running the tuned antenna on my transmitter instead of the stock antenna, which is another Immortal T, or the Diamond. I don't know. I haven't tested that yet. I know Steele's got one of those. I would love to see good things out of it. But for me, right now, the tuned antenna is where it's at.
Cool.
You guys are knocking the questions off the list.
Let's see. Awesome. Actually, I was just about to type an answer here. Eobor asks, did I miss the patron chat question part? No, I'm sorry. You did not miss it. I just flaked on posting it. So I apologize to any of my patrons who are like, why didn't we get the special patron question? I'm really disorganized. I do my best to take care of my patrons and my newsletter subscribers and but I sometimes drop the ball. But hopefully, all in all, it's worth it and it's all good. But I do apologize. I didn't post a Patreon thread for this live stream. It's so much to keep up on. Bob McDonald, we'll do one more Crossfire question. Bob McDonald asks, hey guys, I have a problem with my Crossfire setup. When I turn on Crossfire, my video gets lines through it and I cannot fly. That sounds to me like some kind of RF interference, like maybe your antenna's too close together. I don't know. Either you guys both like Crossfire. Any thoughts about that?
I've never had an issue like that. What output is he doing on the Crossfire?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, because it's at 900 megahertz, and we're up at 5 gigahertz. Presumably, he's at 5 gigahertz video.
Yeah,
it's possible if the antennas are close enough together, there's a thing called the near field, where when two antennas are very, very close together, one will induce signal in the other, kind of even if they're not really tuned or if not on the same frequency. So I would definitely probably keep my video antenna away from my Crossfire antenna. I don't know, Stingy, how close is yours? Are they close together? Or?
I have the LaForge in my goggles, and then I fly with my radio right like this. So they're pretty dang close.
No, I mean like they're on the quad, the receiver on the quad.
Oh,
because the receiver on the quad is also a transmitter, right? It's two-way.
Okay, well, here's the deal, is that if you're having issues in your video feed, you're having them on the receiver end of the video, which is in your goggles. The receiver on the quad is not going to affect the video transmitter on the quad that much. That's my thinking.
Yeah, the only thing that could be happening is like we were talking earlier with the regulator overloading, but that's doubtful unless it's only happening like when he takes his transmitter outside of pit mode or something like that,
But if first of all, the receiver is also transmitting, right? It's two-way. It's telemetry is going back. So the receiver is also a transmitter. If you had a pure receiver, I would totally agree with you. There's no way it could be it could receive interference from the video transmitter. But what I'm wondering is, could he be, when the Crossfire receiver starts transmitting telemetry data, could it be inducing?
I think he's saying we're on the wrong track in the chat.
Could it be?
Yeah. Okay, here's the thing, is that you're going to, on the quad side, you're not going to interfere with the radio transmission from the video transmitter. But you could interfere in the video lines if you have like a really long run of the video signal.
Exactly.
From a
That's what I'm getting
VTX.
at. You could induce some kind of EMFs in the wiring, in the circuit board, but not in the RF. Anyway.
Yeah,
but
possibly.
Chris, you said we're going the wrong way anyway. Is there more info?
Well, Nick Hessen, who's in the chat, says he's had this problem. So, if he could tell us.
Okay,
Bob
Nick.
says when he takes off the antenna, the lines don't happen. When you take the antenna off the transmitter or the receiver?
Yeah. Which antenna are we removing here?
This is going to be the slowest troubleshoot in history.
It's not terrible. The latency isn't that bad, actually.
But which antenna, Bob? You took the antenna off, but which one? The antenna on your transmitter or your antenna on the receiver? He took the transmitter antenna off and the lines went away. Well, that suggests to me that it's being induced in the goggles by the transmitter is so close to the goggles that it's making lines in the receiver.
What video receiver is he using in the goggles?
He says the transmitter is off.
He might be talking about his actual physical transmitter too, like his Tyrannus.
Yeah, that's what I assume.
I hope he
took
is,
the antenna. I wonder if he's talking
really,
about.
None of them are good to take it off the transmitter.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
He says he's tried LaForge. Well, I think the answer is that we don't know exactly. But Bob, if you want to, maybe you could reach out to Random.
This gets to those things where it's way easier to problem solve.
Yeah, this is what you were talking about, where it's like if you're there, you're like, oh, it's right there.
It's the perfect time to plug the quad camp again for anybody who came in late.
Camp, link in the description.
Kevin is here. Kevin is here because he and I, and also Tommy Amagod and Ladrib are going to be in Loganville, Georgia, January 27th through 29th. Did I get the dates right?
The event is the 27th and 28th.
27th and 28th, 2 days for Quad Camp which is a thing. They ran one in California. Basically, you come out, you spend the weekend with us, and we help you make your quad fly awesome and do whatever else you want us to do, short of jumping jacks. So yeah, that's and Prop Bender asked Kevin, quad camp schedule past Atlanta.
Past Atlanta, what I'm willing to say at this point is it's still winter, and we're looking at locations in the southern U.S.
It's freaking cold.
Yeah, because it's freaking cold. Nobody wants to go fly in Maine right now, or even Detroit. Like, we're trying to keep it warm. If we can find indoor venues, which is something we're looking at in some northern places, because it would be really awesome to give some of the northern flyers a warm day of flying by doing something inside. But yeah.
And people reached out to me and said, well, what about my favorite town? And I know that I'm sure that Kevin is going to do everything he can to get to as many people as possible. And that means going to different locations. But, especially in the beginning, when you're trying to get your feet under you, start going to some place like Atlanta where there's tons of FPV pilots. At the end of the day, you got to fill classes. I'm sure that you said earlier, Kevin, that your goal is to be doing basically one a month, which means you'll probably get to everybody eventually.
I think for the most part, pretty soon, if you haven't had one within several hours drive of you, that you can expect one eventually.
Prop Bender asks, what do we do to get you in our town? And I used to teach classes, corporate classes, like you buy our software and then 10 of your engineers come sit in a classroom with me and I teach you. And people would say, what do we do to get you to come over here? And I say, buy 10 seats and we'll go. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have enough people to justify sending people out, then that's the bottom line. Now, that may be a lot to ask if you live in the middle of nowhere. Getting 30 people to commit to a class may be a little bit much to ask. But ultimately, I think, Kevin, what makes the decision is seats full, right?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. At this stage, I think you can look to see quad camp morphing, and it's going to be more widespread in the future. I
see you trying not to reveal too much. I can tell. I see there's more there.
Absolutely. You can expect us to be near you soon.
Oh, very good.
Why do you do this? Why are you doing this?
Let me grab a couple more super chats. James Sheriff asks, whenever I take my girlfriend flying, I constantly hear this whiny, high-pitched interference. Any idea how to fix it? And James, I assume that's a joke. And buy her flowers. Dexter Johnson asks, I have the DYS 30 amp ESC 4-in-1, and whenever I plug my quad in, I do not get no tones, and whenever I plug it in, BLHeli does not recognize no ESCs. So let's talk about the ESC tones. Well, when you first plug the ESC in, BLHeli ESCs, they go doo-doo-doot, and then they do something else. It used to be doo-doo-doot, doot-doot, but ever since now, the later revisions, it makes a different sound depending on which motor protocol you're using. If you're using D-Shot, 600, 150, they've changed the tones a little bit, so you get a little more feedback. But when you hear those first three tones, it tells you that the ESC has power. So if you plug in your battery and you don't hear doo-doo-doot, then you know your ESC is not powered up. And that will happen regardless of whether the flight controller is nothing. If the ESC has power at all, it will go doo-doo-doot. And then the next tones, so if you just hear the doo-doo-doot, but not the second half, it means that it's not seeing throttle signal from the flight controller. So that could mean that your signal wire is disconnected or something like that. It could also mean you're using like D-Shot 600 on an ESC that doesn't support D-Shot or doesn't support D-Shot 600, any one of those things. But if you said I don't get any tones, if you don't get any tones, it means the ESC is not powered up, which with a 4-in-1 probably means, I don't know, man. I mean, you probably soldered the XT60 right to it, right? So there's not a lot that could be going wrong. What you got to do is you got to troubleshoot it with a multimeter. If you don't have a multimeter, you got to get one. In this hobby, you must have a multimeter and a soldering iron. Got to have it, those two things. So you just look with the multimeter and see what voltage is there. And if you have voltage on the pads going into the 4-in-1, but the ESC still doesn't power up, internally it's screwed somewhere. Another question somebody asked was, oh, hey, Bot Grinder's here. Bot Grinder's in the chat. I should send Bot Grinder Bot Grinder, you're welcome to call in if you want. So if you say the word, Chris will get you the link. Chris, can you get the link if you need it? The invite link?
Oh yeah.
You have it.
Yeah,
you have
no
it.
problem.
If Bot Grinder, if you want to call in, call in. We'll get some fun up in here. I keep saying Bot Grinder, I want to do a live stream with you. And we'll see if tonight's the night. Ooh, should have worn my good shirt.
I hope you got your seatbelt on, man.
Yeah, right.
Combine the two of us, it's gonna be a party.
Oh no.
Chris and Bot Grinder are gonna smoke me and Stingy out. Stingy, you're not a pilot anymore. You can do that now. You know.
that is an option.
It is an option.
I plead the fifth.
No comment. That's
I'm
not
neither here nor there.
Georgia is not one of those states where it's legal.
Yeah, no, it is not.
Semi legal. No comment. One of the questions that somebody asked was 4-in-1 ESC versus individual ESCs on the arms. I'm going to give my opinion. Then I'm going to ask you, Kevin, for yours. 4-in-1s are awesome. Used to be that they would blow up a little too often, but seems like that's not the case anymore. That being said, I still sometimes put them on the arms. I don't know. Kevin, what do you think?
So far, I've only done separate ESCs. I'm curious about the 4-in-1s. My only experience was I did a all-in-one from Ready to Fly Quads that was like the flight controller, ESC, everything. And I wasn't
That was
super,
like the Asgard.
yeah,
Asgard,
one
the
of
Airbot.
those. And I wasn't super impressed. That being said, I feel like I need to be trying them out. Right now, my go-to is the Betaflight F4 and the Betaflight 32-bit ESCs.
You like the Betaflight F4 as your favorite flight controller? Is that so?
That's my go-to right now.
Interesting. I did a roundup just recently of flight controllers, and I felt like the Betaflight F4 didn't impress me with the way that, of course, you run Crossfire, so this isn't an issue for you, but the way you had to do UARTs, if you want to do all the features, smart audio, smart port, there was a lot of fiddling around with soft serial and moving this here and there, and I thought,
what did you have to use soft serial for?
Well, I looked at the, I didn't build one. I just looked at the instruction videos from FPV Model, and they only have 3 UARTs, I think, and then the 4th UART is for the serial receiver. But I don't remember. But in the videos that on FPV Model's site, it said that you gotta, if you want to do ESC telemetry, smart audio, soft serial, or smart port, and S-Bus, then you had to do some shuffling around. That's all I remember.
The Betaflight F4 has 4 UARTs.
Correct.
But I don't know what configuration you'd need soft. Maybe GPS. I don't know.
No.
Whatever.
Well, anyway, it didn't blow me away, but with a ringing endorsement from you, probably do well.
I don't know. It works well for me.
Yeah, I think the big thing with 4-in-1s is if you do smoke an ESC, you're out 4. And it's like $60 or $70 often. So they do make a nice build, but they gotta be really bulletproof, reliable. The other thing is sometimes you don't have room in the stack. If you've got a 2-board stack and a low rider frame, you're not going to put a 4-in-1 ESC in there because you just don't have room for the 3rd stack.
Yeah, and that's another thing is rocking the Stingy. I'm 20 millimeter standoff. There's just enough room to do like all-in-one, but I don't know. I would have to move my VTX mounting position.
Yeah. Yep.
To make it work.
Let me ask you this. I fly a Chameleon, which is a low deck, and I fly a QAV-R, which is a high deck, and I'm not necessarily convinced. Everybody's building low decks now. I don't know. I mean, you made yours a low deck, so obviously you like it. What do you see as the big advantage of low deck?
It just changes the distribution of mass is all. And where your center of mass is. I feel like there's a distinct difference between top mount and bottom mount. I think that there's a small difference between top mount, like Alien versus top mount Stingy, in terms like how much that changes. It's just not as big of a difference.
Yeah, I agree that there's a difference between top and bottom mount. I think it's less of a difference than it used to be now that the flight control routines and the PID controllers have gotten better. I think there used to be a lot more neutrality to the bottom. I remember the first time I flew, I think it was a Mixuko from Shendrones. It was the first bottom mount I flew, and it just felt really neutral. But I'm not sure how much of that is because it was a Purex style frame with a camera stack as opposed to like a stretch frame or an H frame versus the bottom versus top mount battery. But I do think there's a difference in the feel. I have a hard time saying what it is though. Chris, what do you got? You got anything for us? Let me look at the super chat as well.
Yeah, I was gonna
Gregor,
say you just got a couple.
yeah, Gregor to go first. Sorry, I probably mispronounced your name. Is there a possibility to join your franchise to organize quad camps in the center of Europe? I would really like to make this hobby to my life. Kevin, you're
Yeah,
gonna franchise?
shoot me a message. Let's chat.
Okay, great.
Get on Facebook. I do look at my message requests if we're not friends. So
hmm Okay, great. And that might be another way if somebody wants to bring the quad camp to their area. If you want to, head up organizing it, maybe that's something to think about. Um, CJ Wudanich asks, what do you think about a Cobra Champ 2210 2200 kV motor for that 6 to 7 inch prop efficiency cruiser, 50-gram motor? 50-gram motor, geez, 2210. I have to say that I have not yet got into this 6 7 inch cruiser line, so I would have to say, sounds good to me. Kevin, you built any 7 inches? Random? You built any
no,
7 inches? Kevin?
I have not.
Chris?
I also have not. I've seen Bob's 6-inch. You did a video on it, so that was
Yeah.
probably the
That was
meanest
the
thing I've
F80s,
seen.
F80 motors. I don't know what actual size that is, though. So I guess I would have to defer to the chat if anybody out there has a comment about Cobra Champion 2210. Cobra are great motors, and 2200 kV sounds kind of about right for a 6 or 7 inch to me. It
Yeah.
feels right.
I run those motors at a little higher kV for a 5-inch, so I don't see a problem with where he's looking at all.
Yeah. Joe Max FPV says, got here late, Bardwell. Any news on Raceflight now with all the breakups in corporate? And what you mean is the whole thing with Kalen Dorr, sort of. Well, some people. I keep saying he left Raceflight, but he says that he is Raceflight. He can't leave it. He took it with him, and he kicked all the other guys out. And now the takeaway is that he's contributing to Betaflight. So Betaflight's open source. Anybody can contribute code and get it merged, and good for them. And he's contributed this Kalman filter. That's Kalman for you guys who are going to write it down later. Kalman filter, which is a really cool filter that makes 32 kilohertz sampling awesome. And some people say it's the next coming of what other people say. Who knows? But I do think Betaflight is going to reap the benefits in the same way that any open source project benefits from talented, smart people contributing to it. And I'm glad to see he's back sort of on the open source wagon. I'm a big fan of open source. And there's other people who are saying, great, Betaflight has to Betaflight's just taking more Raceflight stuff, but it's it's being given freely. So
You mind if I jump in real quick?
yeah, go for it.
I think it will be really interesting to see the transition of what now Betaflight is open source with Kalen turns into, compared to, I guess, for one, what Raceflight was, and secondly, what Raceflight then becomes with Kalen separate from it also. So it's like a really interesting, really we're going to find out like in the next 8 months, a year, whatever it takes for them both to write a brand new code. We're going to find out some really interesting, like, it's going to be a neat battle that will push, I think, flight controller coding ahead. So
yeah, I agree. It's going to push ahead. I had a thought when I was talking to Nathan earlier this weekend, and he said, it makes Betaflight, the Kalman filter makes Betaflight feel a little more like Raceflight, and I thought, well, is that a good thing? Because it's not necessarily a given that the way Raceflight flies is better. Now, I know there's Raceflight fans out there who are having a conniption. What I mean by that is, even if you take away things like the prop wash handling, even if you were to say those are equal, there's a different feel to how KISS flies versus Raceflight versus Betaflight. And if Betaflight starts to feel more like Raceflight, is that necessarily a good thing? What do you think?
I like that there's variety in the feel between the different flight
I would be
controller
interested to
softwares
know,
out there.
like, what specifically he meant. I know when I first flew Raceflight out of the box, it felt different and way more honed in than Betaflight out of the box. But you can tune Betaflight to where it flies as good or better than that experience. I think the difference is when you really start tuning Raceflight,
Yeah. Have you flown Raceflight very much, Kevin?
I flew So John set up one of my quads on Raceflight, and I flew that for a couple of months, and I did like it. It flew really well. It has its own distinct feel that's different from Betaflight and KISS, but for me, ultimately, the decider was just the functionality of Betaflight. Like and now Raceflight's kind of catching up. They're doing more and more of the similar features like OSD and yeah. So it's kind of interesting now. I might have to give Raceflight another try. And part of with Quad Camp is I'm trying to get to where I have like a setup on KISS, Raceflight, everything, so that I'm up to speed on all the new tricks and gizmos, so that when people come in with issues with their setup, I'm familiar.
Yeah, I haven't. And the other thing to keep in mind is that, you know, you say I flew Raceflight when Raceflight 1 first sort of came out. I don't remember what build it was, but a lot has changed since then. So if you're not, sometimes people ask, why don't I get more into KISS or more into Raceflight? And the bottom line is that there's only so many hours in the day, and in order for me to be sort of deep into Betaflight and keep up with it, I just don't have a lot of. I mean, I could be a little bit into KISS. I could try it, but if I just build one KISS quad and then fly it, you know, I need to keep up with every release to really be an authority. And it's really just not enough hours in the day to really do that. So it's not that I'm spurning. I mean, I love KISS. I'm so glad that he's out there doing the development and so forth, Felix and so forth. But I just don't have, you know, I have to stick where I am strongest. So yeah. Somebody asked, do you think, Kevin, do you think, you talked about John, that's schizo, right?
Yep.
Somebody asked, do you think he's going to switch over to Betaflight now?
I don't really see that. No,
I did.
I mean, he's.
Hey, you know about that, Kevin. They added him and Willie are kind of on the Raceflight team now, right?
Yeah, they're both working in terms of programming for Raceflight.
Yeah,
so.
well, they just lost their major programmers, so they need some programmers.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of drama. I try to stay away from it.
Yeah.
No.
Let's see what else we got. Dexter Johnson says, I've been introducing young, middle-aged guys to the hobby. They ask what they should do to get into the hobby, how and what to know. I've got a video, six mistakes that you shouldn't make, 6 beginner mistakes. Go to a quad camp. I don't know, Kevin, you think somebody should go to a quad? Who is the right... Hang on, let me bring Kevin back up. I got a good question for you. Who is the right person to attend a quad camp? Because I'm going to guess it's not a ranked beginner who doesn't even have a quad in the air. Or maybe it is.
Eventually, we would like to have something for someone that comes in, has never flown a drone, doesn't know anything, and take them from their first build right up into ripping. But for that isn't where we're at right now. For the event that's coming up in Atlanta and the event we did in California, it's for the guy that is into the hobby but hasn't really... is having some success. Like, you've gone out, you've flown, but you know that there's probably ways that you can make the quad fly better. You're just not sure where to go next. Maybe you're having problems troubleshooting things. Maybe you're having a repeated issue that you can't figure out what it is. That's the guy that we're looking for. Someone who's, you know, maybe been flying for 2 or 3 months, but isn't like a seasoned veteran yet.
Yeah. Okay. And somebody else was asking, do you get a quad? It's $250 to get in. What do you get?
All right, $250 to get in. What do you get? What you get is one-on-one assistance and education in, and really, it's so hard to quantify because it's not. Gosh, putting me on the spot here.
No, I mean, I just was talking about the logistics. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. You don't get a quad.
Logistics. Yeah,
there's no like, there's no like swag or anything like. I mean, there's probably some swag, but
yeah,
at the end of the day,
a little bit.
At the end of the day, what you're paying for is one-on-one time with one of us. Not just, I mean, at least a little bit because we're celebrities and you want to meet us. But I mean, I know that's there, but because we're going to help you get your quad tuned right, help you answer your questions. We're going to have a great time just hanging out. We're going to fly. We're not just going to sit in a classroom and talk about Betaflight for hours. We're going to go out. We're going to fly. I know you've scouted some cool locations. And you know, so it's going to be fun. It's going to be educational. And rather than having like an outline that we're going to follow and maybe you need it or maybe you don't, we're going to just ask you, hey, what do you have problems with? What do you need help with? And if that's not, I mean, if you had the opportunity to go hang out with 4 celebrity FPV pilots and ask them any question you want, for a lot of people, that's worth $250.
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. And it's shocking how rewarding it is being able to just sit down with somebody at the table. You can see they're frustrated, and it's like, all right, what's going on? What are you having an issue with? And then they tell you, and you're like, oh yeah, I've had that same issue. Let me show you the solution that I found, and then point them in that direction. And then 30 minutes later, they're out ripping and happy. Like, that's rewarding to me.
Yeah, absolutely. That really is what makes it. Hey, FPV Spy, I see what you said there. FPV Spy says celebrity, celebrity. Hey, listen, let me tell you something. My friend Xavier, Zav FPV, who helped me do the HELRC Zeus micro build, and he helped me in my upcoming video where I'm reviewing different Tiny Whoops and Acrobee from Newbie Drone. He said he's from Spain, and he said he was talking to his dad in Spain. He was hiking in the mountains in Spain, and he came across some guys with drones, and he said, my son flies drones. Here, look at this video. He showed him the video. This is in the middle of the mountains hiking in Spain. He showed him the video of Xavier and me building a quad, and this random stranger said, that's Joshua Bardwell. Your son knows Joshua Bardwell? I am a damn celebrity at that point. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I got to own it. Mr. Steele, Johnny FPV, you don't think these guys are celebrities? They're celebrities to the people who are their fans. That's all I meant. Yeah. And StingerSwarm, also a celebrity.
I like to say we're a big deal to a very small number of people.
You got it. And Random FPV, also a celebrity.
There you go.
I'm working.
How many subs do you have?
I think 700-ish, somewhere in there. So I'm
700.
Trying.
700. You guys go sub. What's
you remember those days?
Plug in. I do. 700 was such a big deal. I mean, it's still a big deal.
As many subs as you have live viewers. So.
Oh shit. Plug your live stream again. Plug your live stream again for anybody who just came in.
It's Dead Man Show, and it's on the Random FPV channel currently. We will eventually move it to its own channel, but right now we're going to do it on mine. It's Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Kind of similar to this, actually. Josh, Stingy, we'd love to have both you guys on. And
yeah. This whole live stream scene is getting a little bit incestuous, I worry. I mean, it's whatever. As long as people are happy to watch it, I'm happy to do it. But, we're going to end up like with this, everybody just going on each other's. We'll be like the Rat Pack, just all hanging out with each other.
I've actually got an idea to solve all that, but I'll keep that between us for right now. But, yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
I keep threatening Bot Grinder to just do live streams, but always only when his live stream is scheduled.
That's the thing that you gotta. I remember I did a Thursday night live stream, and Paul Nurkala was doing builds on Thursday nights, and I was like, oh shit, I scheduled over him. But now you could hardly avoid scheduling over somebody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We try to communicate. A lot of us, so, kind of have like backdoor Facebook DM groups where we try to correlate with everyone, but it's not always easy. There's been several times I've set a live stream, got online, and then somebody else has already publicized theirs, and I'm like, oh, I gotta change it. So yeah, it just depends. You gotta pick your battles.
Yeah. Dan Solo asks, Bardwell, you're full of yourself. Whatever happened to you? Nothing happened to me. I've always been full of myself. I'm also humble, but I'm humble, but I'm also not gonna pretend to be something I'm not. So I said, when 30 people want to pay $250 to come help you fix their quads, I mean, that says something about where you're at. And I'm not going to pretend that's not true. I'm not trying to pump myself up by saying, come fly with celebrity pilots. But there's a reason that people want to come see these people. And it's because they're, and me, we got 60,000 people who want to watch my videos. That's something. Doesn't mean I'm special, but it does mean I think it's valid to call myself a celebrity. I don't know. I'm people. I've got some flack recently for being arrogant for calling myself FPV know-it-all, and I'm like, it's a brand. It doesn't mean I literally know everything. And part of a brand name is that it needs to be stimulating. It needs to stick in your mind. And so when I thought about it, I was like, FPV know-it-all. Yeah. But it doesn't mean I literally know everything or I think I'm better than you. It's just a brand, right? I'm trying to think of another brand that has that kind of sort of enticing. I'm blanking on the word, antagonizing name, but
It kind of, I mean, I thought it was sarcastic when
it is a little bit.
I know the lady that designed your logo. I actually got to see your logo before. You don't know this. She's probably gonna kick my butt. She was working on it. She was really excited. So there you go. There's another pat on the back because she was like, "I'm doing freaking Josh Bardwell's logo,"
Yeah.
But she showed it to me, and I kind of took a second look, and then I realized, well, I mean, you're the go-to guy for questions. You don't know it all. None of us do, right? Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously. And it makes sense. I mean, it's like a brand name, like mayonnaise is called mayonnaise. Who cares what the word sounds like? It makes you remember what mayonnaise is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've always had a, I mean, I get accused of being arrogant, and it's like, I know where that comes from. I get that. I'm not like this fainting flower. And especially as I've gotten more into my channel and more comfortable with it, I've been able to let my personality come out. So if you were watching me 2 years ago, I was a lot quieter. I maybe wasn't as outgoing, and you might have thought, oh, this guy's like this. But then as the channel goes on, it's not that I've changed. It's just that more of my personality has gotten into the videos. You've just gotten to know me better. It's like you meet your girlfriend, and on the first date, she's wonderful. And 6 years later, you're like, what happened to you? And it's like, nothing happened to her. She was just like that. She just, nothing changed.
I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
The first time I ever flew with the group was you were there.
Mm-hmm.
And when I showed up, you were really nice to me, and you even tried to help us fix a problem we were having with our quad. I didn't treat you any differently, than a normal person, because you're a normal person at the end of the day, which I think a lot of these people sometimes have a problem remembering. But you were just a normal dude, and you still are.
A normal dude. Yeah.
I think the more people get to know you, the more you do these live streams, they'll understand that there's no enjoy a little poke, a little knee
well
rub,
it's like I said in the vlog. I did a vlog. I'm sorry, I'm not proud of it. I did a vlog recently. I had a 3-hour drive to Atlanta, and I said, what the hell, let's try vlogging. It's not the worst thing I could have done, believe me. And I said, no matter what you do on the internet, 1,000 people will tell you it's the best thing they ever saw, and 1,000 people will tell you you ruined your whole life and you've changed, and it's not. So yeah, you never know. I used to have I saw it scroll by. I had those in-depth tuning videos. I mean, I still have. Here's the thing. Let's talk about tuning. Kevin, you get in on this too. I don't do as many tuning videos as I used to, and one reason for that is that I don't think tuning is as important as it used to be. I used to have to work like a dog to get a quad to fly good. And now you put Betaflight or KISS for Raceflight on it, and it flies pretty good. So in some sense, what do you think, Kevin? Is tuning dead?
Tuning is not dead, but tuning is different. When I started a quad, there was a proper tune, and that was it. But now you tune more for feel. And so I've been thinking about this lately too, and maybe doing a video on it and the differences in tuning. From basically when I made my tuning video, it was the end of when all of that was necessary. Man, I don't want to say that doesn't work. Like my old tuning video is still relevant, and I can do that process to get to a good flying quad. But I also know that if I do that process, I end up with numbers about this far off from stock. And so I just kind of move the numbers from stock to that because that's how I like it to feel, and done.
Yeah. And you have that tuning video that got really popular. I actually was a little bit jealous. Because I do a tuning video, and it's like 40 minutes long in 5 parts, and a lot of people are just like, and then you put out this really punchy, concise little 20-minute tuning video or however long it was, and it's that technique still produces good results, and I was a little bit like, damn you. Do you think your tuning technique is still relevant?
I think it is still relevant, but I don't think that it is as necessary as it was before. This is one thing I'll say, for instance, at the first quad camp, I did a big tuning seminar where I walked people through it, and I did it FPV because a lot of people there were not as comfortable at flying line of sight. And And then people went and tuned their quads, and then they came to me and they're like, "Hey, fly my quad and tell me what you think." And I would fly it, and I'd be like, "This is awful. What is wrong?" And I would look at the PIDs, and the PIDs looked like, "Oh, that's ballpark what I would expect a good flying quad to be. Let me go and look at your setup." And it was invariably something in the Betaflight setup that was causing the issue, not the PIDs. And that's why this time around at Quad Camp, we are going to focus on setup more so than tuning. We're still going to talk about tuning, but we're going to have we're going to walk people through let's start from scratch. And these are the things that you need to be looking for in your setup.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I agree with that a lot. One reason that you don't see me doing as many tuning videos is that I feel like in a lot of senses I've covered it, and that info is still relevant. The last tuning video I know I did in depth was the Armatan Chameleon versus Alien, where I did a full PID tune on each of those. That was a little while ago, but I mean there was 2 in a row. But I do agree that setup has a lot more to do with it. If your quad doesn't fly at least decent on default PIDs, probably something's screwy with your setup. And PID tuning, you shouldn't try and then tune the PIDs to get around it. You should try to fix the thing that's wrong with the setup. But unfortunately, that's a lot harder to make a video about, because there's just so many ways to screw up your setup.
And that's the thing that I was talking to Nick Willard about this the other day, because he was kind of ragging on me about the whole, he's like, "You're giving up the airline job to do quad camp and teach people?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, what are you teaching them anyways?" And I'm like, "Dude, there's so much knowledge that we have from being in this hobby for years and years." And he's like, "But it's not that much to learn." I'm like, "No, it is. You have to understand that we had this huge barrier to entry when we got in, but then to keep up to speed, it's fairly little things. Like we're talking about Kalman filters now. And, a couple months ago, we would have been talking about PT1 versus biquad and turning off notch filters. It's all these little pieces of information that we gather over and over and over until you have a lot of information just floating around in your head about it. And trying to pass that on in a concise way in a video is next to impossible. Sitting down with somebody and looking at their quad and being like, "Oh, well, here's the thing that you've missed out somewhere in your education process in this hobby. Let me fill you in on why we do this way." And boom, now they've learned about it and they're ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. There's another side of it too. Enough about that. Let's talk about me some more. There's another side of it too, which is that my channel has always been, it started with me wanting to learn about black box. And in the process of me learning about it, I wanted to share that experience and that process with other people. And if that's the common element. You guys think that my channel is about black box or PID tuning or whatever. And it is, but mostly it's about me sharing whatever I'm learning and doing in a way that helps pull you guys along with me. And if the Betaflight has gotten so good that the default PIDs fly pretty good, and I'm just not spending much time PID tuning, I'm not going to suddenly then start making PID tuning videos just for the sake of doing it. So right now I'm doing this cool battery testing, and I will be doing more PID tuning videos. Like for example, now that I've got more in, I've finally kind of seen the light for micros and whoops. I want to do some PID tuning videos for those and see how that's a new topic that I haven't already covered. But those older PID tuning videos, they're still relevant in some sense. Well, they're not as relevant. A lot of a lot has changed.
We had MB Astro on Deadband last weekend, and he kind of backed up everything you guys said. When he builds a new quad, he said, "I just put my PIDs on it." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "I don't tune it. I just put my PIDs on it." He's got a set PID setting that he likes the way it feels, just like you said, Kevin. And that's what he does on his race quad. So he can just switch, he said, I'll put it on anybody's quad and fly, kind of like that, as long as they're running the new firmware. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure I agree with that. I'm not a big fan of copying PIDs, especially if the motors are different and the props are different. You're going to get a different experience.
Well, and that's a good point to make. He's got very specific props and very specific things, so he can do that in that respect. Good point.
Yeah. We're coming up now to the end of the second hour. We're probably going to wrap up pretty soon. There was one question I saw go by. Somebody was asking, how do I go about getting a frame produced? I'll give one answer, and then Kevin, you had a frame produced, so maybe you can add to it. But if you're a small guy who wants it produced, you gotta lay it out. I don't. What do they use? They use SolidWorks. What do people use to design frames nowadays? What software? Anybody know?
I don't even know.
Nobody knows.
Yeah,
Oh well. Anyway,
I know SolidWorks is used because I've definitely heard that and seen some STL files and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you gotta
yeah.
get it cut. So one thing you can do is you can go to Armatan. I know Armatan will take and basically cut your design for you. I believe they offer that service pretty much to anybody, not just. They also have a thing they'll do where they'll sell your frame in their store, which is a separate thing. But that's not what you're talking about. But I think
It's
they'll
Armatan
cut
Productions.
Armatan Productions. Yeah, they'll cut it for you and they'll send you 5 of them. It's going to be expensive. It's not going to be $20 a frame like if you'd ordered 1,000 of them. But there you go. You can also find somebody who has a CAD, a cutting machine, a CNC machine. If you're lucky, if you have a makerspace, you can buy the carbon and cut it yourself. But are there any other services other than Armatan that'll cut a frame for you?
There are, but they're not as consumer oriented. You're looking more at, buying hundreds of units.
Yeah. Not if you need like 5.
Yeah. Armatan's the way to go if you're looking to just, hey, I want a quad that's X, Y, and Z, and I want it to be special. Then yeah, it's a good avenue.
Yeah.
There's actually a couple guys on Facebook that do have the capability, like basically they do something else as a day job, make signs or something like that. And if you get in touch with a couple people, so I'd say put a message out there. There's a Steve, and I can't remember his last name, and I want to say Robert Wheeler can also cut carbon. So just a couple names, if you see him on Facebook, anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can see, and also you can see my voice is I'm starting to get a cold, so I hope that I will.
Yeah.
You can tell
I just
my
get
voice is
over one,
starting to
man.
wear out. Yeah. Everybody in the house had it, and I was hoping to dodge it, but I guess not. So, Chris, any other comments that I've missed, or any questions outstanding?
Well, to be honest, we've missed a lot, but it's completely impossible to touch on everything in one of these streams. If we literally tried to answer every question, we would do like a 10-hour stream. You've touched on the majority. Let me glance through. There were some quad camp questions you guys might want to explain a little bit better. The AMA stuff. I guess there's a couple people that still aren't clear exactly maybe what that is or what they need. Does AMA still offer the temp registration too, the like 90-day one?
Yes, they do still offer the I forget what they call it, but there is the 90-day one, as you mentioned, and that is perfectly adequate.
Yeah. So basically, you guys, you have to have an AMA license to go to quad camp. Go to, I guess, the AMA website, and you can get the information on that. But if you don't necessarily want to join the AMA for like a year, they have a temporary, I want to say it's $20 or so. It might have went up this year, I don't know. But it's a 90-day trial membership, basically. Mm-hmm. So that is one way to do it.
What else about quad camp?
Give me just a moment. I think you guys got to the guy that asked actually how he could look at doing them in Europe, right? I do remember that.
Just message me.
Yep.
Okay.
And Copper Jacket FPV asks, what do you mean by setup? We're saying you have a problem with your setup. But what we mean by that is you built the quad bad.
Well, not even just built it bad. It could be like a setting that you have enabled or disabled within Betaflight. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I say setup, I don't just mean the software, though. I mean you've got loose screws. You got your flight controller mounted wrong. There's all kinds of little mistakes you can make when you build the quad.
Shorting out motor wires.
Yeah. Do you need a F? I don't think you guys are going to be checking the FCC license or anything like that, right?
No.
Your ham license. I mean, you're supposed to have a ham license to fly FPV at all, but the only reason I think that they're checking the AMA membership is for insurance purposes, because an AMA membership comes with this blanket insurance policy, so that if then their insurance doesn't have to cover it, and it makes it a lot cheaper. They don't really care if you have your 107 or if you have your ham license, but you should have it. But
yeah.
Let's see, you guys.
If there are questions that I think we didn't really touch on the whole time, if you guys want to give one more, and then we'll call it a night. Sound good?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so simulators. Do you use them?
Ooh,
and which one do you think has the best physics?
Oh, I'm really glad you caught that. I saw that and I meant to get to it. I'm so glad we had you here. Kevin, what sims do you fly?
I don't fly a lot of sims anymore. I think that sims are an invaluable resource, and if you're getting into this hobby, you should have a sim and you should fly it a lot. I do play around with Velocidrone. It's fun. They have a lot of really fun tracks, and I actually, in terms of Velocidrone, I like the racing on it more than freestyling. I got in there and I messed around with freestyling, but I was like, I could do this with a real quad. What was fun with me was messing around at like a Rotor Riot get together and like going back to back with Tommy and Drew, and we even got Schizo in when they were in Atlanta, and just taking turns and setting times and pissing people off.
Mm-hmm. I'll say that the simulator I actually want to do a roundup of simulators, but there's a problem. When I went full time, I decided to commit myself to doing quality videos and not. Basically, my rule is that when I think, oh, you know what I should do, and then I think, oh, that's going to take forever, then I have to do it. And as a result, it means I'm not producing videos as quickly. You don't notice that because I'm still putting them out at about the same rate, but it's just taking a lot more time. And so I've been working on this this video review of the first one I'm going to do is Liftoff, because I don't know if you guys watched my channel for a long time. You may remember I did a review of Liftoff a while back, and it was really sort of silly and kind of negative. It was a really early version of Liftoff, and I really panned it. And so I figured, if I'm going to go back and do reviews of simulators, I should start with the one that started it all. It's gotten way better, by the way, and I've been flying Liftoff and really enjoying it. Their physics have gotten a lot better. The freestyle, the C-bit track it's just a freestyle paradise. It's a lot of fun. I really like it. I would say that the physics on none of them are perfect, but if you were to hand me StingerSwarm's quad or Chris's Random FPV's quad and fly it, it wouldn't feel perfect right out the gate either. So I think that on most of these simulators now, the physics are close enough that it's not as different as if you're just flying somebody else's quad. And especially on some of them, you can tweak the physics a lot. I think Velocidrone, you can tweak the physics. The one I've been flying a lot is Liftoff. The DRL, the new DRL one that's on Steam, it costs a little bit of money, but the physics are way better than it used to be, especially if you don't pick the DRL Racer, which is a really heavy quad. It's like a heavy 5S quad, but they have options to fly other ones. The DRL simulator was the first one I flew where I felt like that yaw felt right in turns. Every other simulator, yaw feels really slidey. I don't know why. And then you get used to it and you deal with it. But I also flew Velocidrone some, and I liked racing on it. Another one I want to point out is Rotor Rush, it's a subscription. It's like $5 a month, which a lot of people object to, but they're constantly they do real tracks that you can fly from real events, and the physics on it are pretty good. Some people have said they think it's the best. Chris, what about you? What do you flying simulators?
Yeah, I've actually, for freestyle, fly the GTA 5 mod, which is incredible.
Oh, nice.
It's basically, yeah, you have the entire GTA 5 environment. It's amazing, man. Like, it's really, really, really awesome.
And the physics are decent?
Kind of boring. The best thing about it is you can actually adjust it all. Yeah. So, like, you can make it feel however you want. You can make your quad feel heavy, light, floaty, not, like, whatever you want. It can do it. But the reason I say it's boring, Kevin, you can't play with anyone else, and there's no structure for, like, race gates and stuff like that. So it's strictly freestyle, but it's so much fun for that.
Yeah, it's which of these have multiplayer? Because I know that Liftoff has multiplayer.
On Liftoff a lot. It seems to run the best on my computer in multiplayer. And DRL some, and in my private time I actually like flying DRL for racing. I would say Liftoff for multiplayer, DRL for racing, and GTA 5 for freestyle. That's my
nice. And I really like in Liftoff, and I know Liftoff isn't the only one that does this, just the one I've been flying lately, where they'll have a competition basically where you have like 3 tries at a track. Now you can practice the track as much as you want, but then when you say go, this is your try, and you get like there's a limited number. Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 10, whatever. And you got to put in the best time, and then they'll do a leaderboard. I really dig that almost more than just head-to-head racing in multiplayer, where you can try and just get the best time around a track. I really like that. All right. All right. I think Bot Grinder. Bot Grinder's selling Botcoin. He's got a new Bitcoin, a new cryptocurrency. It's Botcoin. If you guys want to get in on the cryptocurrency bubble and make Bot Grinder rich
per
and nobody
coin.
else.
I heard that it's guaranteed to go up 300 billion% in the next 2 months.
300 million now? Because the
Really?
last
Yeah.
guarantee was
Let me
just
tell you guys,
1
I did
million
a-
percent.
I did an interview with Maddie. You know, he's got the new podcast that he's doing with this. I don't know if it's permanent, but it's with Ladrib and Chad Capper were on it, and Maddie's hosting it. What is that called? Remind me what that's called so I can plug it properly.
It's like un something.
Yeah, it's a terrible plug. It's
Oh
going
my
to come out
gosh.
on Friday. Why don't you guys look it up while I'm talking? But
Unrestricted?
Maddie was like, "Oh yeah, for
Uncensored?
the last like 3 months, I haven't been flying because I've been so into Bitcoin. I was just big. All he wanted to talk about was Bitcoin for the whole interview. Well, not literally the whole interview, but it was actually a really cool interview. I'm looking forward to it coming out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, unrestricted.
Unrestricted podcast. What's the URL, Kevin? Do you have it handy?
Oh my god, I
Damn
just looked it up. No,
Kevin,
I
you just had it. You just had it.
don't. I just looked it up actually on the Rotor Riot YouTube channel because I know that they put
Okay.
the video
That's
out.
that's where they're posting it. Okay. So yeah, I'll be on that. I think it's coming out Friday. I think it is. So, all right, guys, that's gonna wrap it up. We're gonna close up. I had a great time. Thank you, Kevin, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Come to Quad Camp January 27th and 28th in Loganville, Georgia, if you can. If you cannot, come to any of the next ones that will be coming soon and look for more awesome things from Rotor Riot and from Kevin in the education and environment. Thank you, Chris. Random FPV. You're on. You're
Yeah,
muted.
buddy. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah. Thank you, guys. I also want to say, if I didn't answer your question now, whether you're a patron or not, whether you donate or not, I answer almost everybody's question, whether you pay me or not. Even though now that it's my full-time job, I do appreciate if you pay me. But I do this because I have an illness that causes me to want to answer people's questions. It's been that way from the beginning. You ask me a question and I'm just like, there's somebody out there who needs help, and they're coming to me and they're asking me to help them. And that's not an imposition, that's a privilege. And as a result, it meant I could quit my day job walking around hospitals testing Wi-Fi and sit in this room every day, all day, making videos and talking to you guys, which is another enormous privilege. So if I didn't answer your question on the chat, or if you're a patron and you're kind of mad that I didn't give you a special post, just Facebook message me, email me. Don't call my phone. Don't do that. But almost anything else, comment on a YouTube video. I answer every single one that I possibly can. If I miss it, I apologize. You're always welcome. Thank you, guys. And we are gonna sign off. Bye, everybody.